Well, hello everybody. Welcome again to our Protractor webinar series for 2017. Today we're going to carry on with part 3, the last in the inventory management side. As you can see on the bottom, as always, we do bring all the webinar recordings and support materials all up to the help system. And our goals are always to try and stay at 45 minutes and leave about 15 minutes for questions. I'm going to try and do a little better at that today, okay? So our webinar today is going to cover inventory imports and some of the most popular batch updates, not all of them. And just as you guys just want to reinforce the fact that these webinars will all be up in the help system. And if you need any help accessing or loading, downloading any of that stuff, just let us know. We're going to dive right in today. Our agenda, we're going to start with inventory imports. If you need to bring new inventory items into your system, there's a report utility that works very nice. And we're also going to spend some time on the batch updates. Unfortunately, we're only going to cover 3 of the batch updates today because there's just so much information on these. We want to try and do a good job with what we do bring to you. So we're going to cover the inventory recounts, we're going to cover the inventory material information, and then updating the material sell prices. The remaining batch update features will be covered in an upcoming seminar. We're going to put together a special little seminar for that. It's kind of advanced, but we'll let you know when we get that one scheduled. So today we want to dive right into inventory imports. We are going to go ahead and start with a couple of poll questions. Okay guys, so we have a poll question up here. Have you ever used the inventory batch update feature in the past? So simply yes or no. We'll give this a few seconds for everybody to get answered. We're about 85–90% now. 61% of the people say yes, they have. 39% of the people say no, they haven't. You know, in hindsight, I was just thinking on this poll question, I wish we had a question that said, were you successful at what you were trying to achieve? Unfortunately, we didn't get that poll question up. But that would be interesting to us to see if you were successful with the batch update that you did. Okay, we have another poll question we're going to run right away, so we're just going to throw the next poll question up here, if you would, Jeff. Okay, so the next poll question is inventory imports can be processed using what file types? This is pretty important. So can we use a PDF file? Can we use a Microsoft Word? Can we use a Microsoft Excel or a CSV file? So the answer to this question is, can we use a PDF file to do an inventory import? And the answer is no, we cannot. You can convert a PDF file into an Excel file, which we do use Excel files. We do not use Microsoft Word files. One note, if you wanted to jot down any notes, one note here is on Excel. We do use Microsoft Excel files to do imports, but you cannot import from an XLS file. That's an older file type. It is required to use an XLSX file. If you wanted to jot that down, it's a Microsoft Excel.XLSX. That's the only Excel file we import from. CSV files we do import from. So the correct answer would be an Excel XLSX file or a CSV file. We do not import from Word or PDF files. So if you guys got a note on that, that's great. And otherwise you will run into problems. It's not going to recognize anything other than an XLSX or CSV file. Okay, we've covered the agenda. We want to talk about these. So right where we pick up. When preparing the import file, okay, put as much data in as you can. Create the data files or the import files by profit center and service category that are in your system or to be entered prior to the import. And the same with a supplier. You'll be prompted to enter a supplier, so have that supplier in before you start the import process. Required and optional fields for the data import. Required entries are going to be the part number and description. Optional entries manufacturer code, size, grid, low and high order quantities, buy factor, your cost and your core, manufacturer suggested retail price and the core, ability to sell fractional quantities, how do you track the core units, and then of course there's a consignment option also. Profit centers and service categories, default supplier, and unit conversion are all required to complete the inventory import. And you will see this here in just a minute. So what I wanted to do is take you guys out and show you what we recommend you use as the import template. This is the import template that we've created and recommend everybody use if you're importing inventory. It is not required, but we are pretty much assured that it's going to work great if you use this template. An example, I have a gentleman that sent me a list here a while back with some Goodyear tires on it. If you guys look at the list, of course, there's good information all the way across this. I tried importing off of this list, and I got nothing but trash. Okay, I took that same information and put it onto our import template. So this is the template we use, and I simply just copied and pasted his information onto this template, and when I imported, it all aligned perfectly. So just as you know, it's not required, but it's highly recommended that we use the import template. You can see in here on the template, I've made in red the columns that are required. So part number and description are required. I don't feel that importing inventory without a cost is a valid way to do it, so I try to get most everybody to get a most current cost on the item so that we don't have to come back and enter that at a later date. So you guys can see the entries. And on the template, just as a footnote, any of these columns, if you just hover over, you're going to get a little pop-up note that will try to explain more about what that column information is going to do for you. So keep that in mind. And just again, I want to point out the XLSX file is the only one that will be recognized. Now, you cannot have a file open to do an import. The file that you're going to import from must be closed. So we're just going to close this file up. And let's go back to our presentation. I want to move to the next screen, which is going to be a refresher that the file needs to be an XLS file or a CSV file type. The best practices are going to be to use the import template, and we're going to make that template available for download within the help system, so everybody will have access to it. The tabs and labels at the bottom can be changed. In other words, if we go back to the template, you're going to notice tabs at the bottom that represent the service categories that are currently in our template. You certainly have the ability to go in and rename, or you also have the ability, if you want, to insert a new tab if you have added any service categories to your system that you want to import to. So the organization is going to be by service category, and often it can be by supplier, and you'll see a little bit more of this going forward. So let's go back over here. Oops, sorry. Okay, other things on this, each tab requires an individual import, or what I often do is import all the inventory into one service category, and then I use the batch update to move, add, or edit any other information. So you have options on this once you learn a little bit more how to use these. Just a note, if you have duplicated inventory on the import, there will be duplicate part numbers in your system. So if you already have a part number in and you import it a second time, you're going to have 2 of them. If you import it a third time, you're going to have 3 of them. So make sure you don't have on your import template items that have already been imported. Okay, if there are any invalids, meaning the import utility doesn't recognize that, then the software, the import utility, would automatically create a file name using whatever your inventory template name is, and it will be called invalid. And it will then create that file and put it in the same folder where the import utility you're using is coming from. Make sure you reference that to find out what didn't get imported or what the problem is. And lastly, let it be known that you cannot import formulas. If you have a formula in any of the cells, okay, if you have a formula, and often we see formulas under the MSRP or the cost pricing, you're going to need to remove those formulas because we cannot import a formula. All right, what we want to do is actually do an inventory import. So let me bounce back to my system, and I've got my database set up here. So I'm going to go into Setup. I'm going to go down to Inventory Materials, and this again is the only place that you can process an inventory import from. So I'm going to go ahead and select Inventory Import. The system is asking me to locate the file that has the data that I want to import from. Okay, and I have that actually right here under a testing, and there is the information on the inventory import template, and I'm going to actually open that file. It's going to recognize that file. Once it does, I move to the next screen. The inventory I'm importing is strictly tires, so I'm just going to go to the tire tab where those items are listed. And then all I need to do is align these columns. So part number aligns to part number, description aligns to description, manufacturer to manufacturer. I don't have any codes, so I'm not going to align that column. Size to size. I don't have any grids. I don't have any low and high orders, buy factors, but I do have a cost and an MSRP. So I'm going to go ahead and align my cost, and I'm going to align my manufacturer's suggested retail price. Any of the other information that would be up here, you would simply align those columns. Once aligned, we move to the next screen. This is where it prompts me to identify what service category I want to put these items in. Okay, so in my case, I've created a little category. This is just for us to do this today, so I'm going to put this in here. Normally, this list would probably go into tires and wheels, but I'm going to put it in here to separate it from everything else. Now it's asking me to identify a default supplier. Okay, well, there may be conditions here. I might buy some of those tires from one supplier, some of them from a different supplier. So we've added a none, meaning we're not going to identify who the supplier is on these items. But if I bought all these items on the import list from the same supplier, I could simply identify that supplier here, and it'll automatically import that. So I'm going to go back to none because I'm going to show you guys some of the batch update utilities. My unit conversion is unit to unit, meaning I'm buying a tire and I'm selling a tire. I don't have a group, and my pricing is good as of today's date. When I get these aligned, next, start. 64 items have now been imported into my inventory. Make sure you wait till this note up here says complete. Okay, don't use the green bar. Look at the note. Only when the note says it's complete. Close. Okay, let's go look at the inventory. I put this under the Profit Center test. I put it under the inventory import. I'm going to do a search. And now if we look at any one of these items, this is what got imported. I identified this service category. There's the part number, the description, manufacturer, size. I said none for the supplier. My standard unit conversion. If I go to pricing, there's my cost. There's my MSRP pricing. Very clean, very nice, as long as it's done properly. So very simply, we just imported 64 inventory items into the software. Nicely done. Let's go back to the presentation and just do a quick review. To do an inventory import, you must access that from Setup, Inventory Materials, Inventory Import. Locate and select the import template, spreadsheet, or CSV file where the items are located. From the worksheet field, select the tabs using the drop-down. So at the first, remember I said I entered all these under tires, so I selected that tab where those tires were entered that I wanted to import. Map each column to align the import information. Select the profit center and service category from the drop-down list. Select the default supplier from the drop-down, or use none and update it later. Use the default unit conversion, or use the drop-down if it's a different conversion. Inventory import is completed. If there were any issues, the software will tell you that it's created an invalid file, and we strongly encourage you to review the invalid file to find out what information did not get imported.